that stuff is real. That should be our sign to cling even tighter to the Lord.
Even if there are things in this world that we can't understand, we know that our God has a good plan and purpose for his creatures, for us. Welcome back to the Christian Boys. My name is Brenton. This is Jacob, the guy who always seems to wear the exact same hat in every single one of our thumbnails. No idea why. How are you doing today, Jacob?
Pretty good. I got my exact same hat on, so
Yeah,
I feel ready. This is my podcasting hat.
Is that so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Representing one of the worst teams ever.
Tampa Bay is not great. So.
Yeah. But, that's what we are here for, is the underdogs.
Yeah, the underdog team. We're here to talk about Jesus, the Bible, Christianity, the largest world religion.
Loose mics that I have to tighten up.
Yeah, it's the largest religion right now, but you never know. The Muslims are catching up, so we'll see what happens. Anyway, we are here to discuss some random topics today because we just love talking about random stuff when it comes to theology. And so we were going to start off by talking about aliens.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. So aliens, interesting questions that we wanted to kind of get into when it regards extraterrestrials. The first question would be, do we even think aliens exist? Is there evidence for it? Do you think that philosophically it's possible for there to be life on other planets? What are kind of just your opening thoughts about life on outside of our world?
That was a great question. Honestly, for me, I have not dived into enough to make a stern opinion. So I want to throw that out there first of anything that I'm saying right now, for one, on this type of question is opinion based. There'll be other questions we get into that are very much fact based and that I hold strongly to, but this is more of one that I'm I haven't really looked into it. It doesn't really matter to me. But I know it's a hot topic and people want to know about it, so we're going to talk about it a little bit. I just want to be very clear on that before I start speaking that I am not the expert in this particular question.
Yeah.
And
Me either.
But it's something fun to ask. And
Yeah.
to a certain degree, I mean, God is the creator of all things. He is magnificent in a way that we can't even grasp. Mm-hmm. So if and on top of that, the wisdom that God has is far beyond anything we could ever comprehend. And we know that there are other beings besides us. So let's state that first. There are angels and demons.
Yes.
We know that much. There is spiritual beings other than us. There's God, there's those spiritual beings, and there's us.
That we know of.
That we know of concretely, right? Mm-hmm. So we know that there is the potential for the existence of something other than human beings.
Right.
However, is there directly aliens? I don't know. But could there be? Oh, heck yeah.
Sure.
Because God is immensely powerful and could create other beings besides us if he wanted to. That's kind of my initial stance on it. What do you think, man?
I think that when it comes to life on other planets, there's this thing called the Fermi paradox, which is basically, given how vast our universe is, it seems outrageously likely that there is other planets that have life on them, but we have very little to no evidence that there is life on other planets, and so it's paradoxical. There should be mathematically higher odds that it does exist, and yet we have less evidence for it. So that's called the Fermi paradox. You can look into it. It's really interesting. But personally, I'm not really persuaded one way or the other. I think it's definitely possible that life on other planets exists, but I would say if they did, it'd be something more akin to microbiology or something maybe even larger, something like cows. Some kind of creature that isn't sentient or have the same level of intellect that humans do. That seems more likely to me than that there is also sentient life outside of Earth, because it's incredibly unlikely that our planet would have sentient life, much less any other. So,
well, if I could break that down a little
Sure.
bit, scientifically, it is extremely unlikely that we were able to have life on this planet.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the razor's edge that we live on is insane.
Yeah.
I 100% affirm the fact that we are protected by the Lord, and that's how we're allowed to remain in this existence. But that being said, when you look at the likelihood of there being a potential of another existence, yeah, sure. There's the potential because of how extremely vast the universe is. But that being said, the universe is extremely vast. So the thought that something would actually be able to reach us, I mean, it would take a technology beyond anything we currently can even comprehend.
Yeah, the most recent estimate that I heard was that using current technology that we have with like combustion engines and things like that, if we were to set sail to reach the edge of our universe, the Milky Way, or not universe, our galaxy, the Milky Way, it would take like 93 billion years or something like that with current technology. Just to go 1 light year would take so much time.
Which is such a small drop in the bucket if you were to look at, okay, what are the potentials of someone else living on a razor's edge and having life?
Yeah.
And to be able to reach them, it's just...
Even for communication to reach them, which can travel at the speed of light, it would take hundreds of thousands of years to even reach them. Just communication to reach them, much less another person.
Yeah, as the universe is also currently expanding, and, it's just insane to think about.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane.
Cosmology is really interesting when it comes down to it. But, yeah, you'd think that we would have more evidence of aliens if they did exist. But yeah, that kind of leads into the second question a little bit. If we were to find out that aliens did exist, would that affect our theology?
110% no.
Explain. 110%. What do you mean?
Because again, God's plan is sovereign and just and wonderful. And if part of his plan, which whatever eschatology you hold, I know certain eschatologies lean towards the use of aliens. I've heard certain more fringe parts of eschatology.
I was going to say that's not very mainstream.
No. I'm not talking about mainstream stuff. More fringe. Talking about aliens being potentially used in the end times, right? And okay, that's fine. But again, it doesn't affect our theology. Aliens show up right now. Okay, well, hey, you need Jesus. Guess what? Because that's literally what it is. We know that God is. So another thing, when we were talking about how vast the universe is and how amazing and how we live on such a razor's edge, it literally points you to Christ. That's what we're trying to say, is that his plan is wonderful and designed, and if that's part of it, so be it. Who cares? We still have our hope, faith, and trust in the Lord that he will hold and protect us and keep us for his own in the ultimate end.
I think when it comes to whether or not the question of like whether or not aliens would affect our theology, God's plan of salvation and redemption was for humanity, right? Like Jesus didn't die on the cross to save bunnies from their sins, At the same time, all of creation is under the corruption of sin, and is longing to be redeemed. Longing to be set free, longing for the sons of God to be revealed is the way that the Apostle Paul puts it, which is us, longing for us to be formed in the image of Christ, essentially. And or you could interpret it with the angels to be revealed at the second coming of Christ. Either way, at the end of all things, all of creation will be redeemed. The point is, if God's salvific plan was for humanity, and we did find out that there was aliens, and I assume when we're talking about aliens, we're talking about sentient aliens, like self-aware aliens, then God may have a different plan for them, or he may not. And, I mean, ultimately, we know, like you were saying, we know that there are other beings that exist, like angels and demons and the spiritual beings, who God's plan of salvation that we know of does not extend to them. And I would think that if there were sentient aliens of some sort, that God may have a different plan for them that we know nothing about, and he doesn't intend for us to know because it's not for us. There's a certain side of it where you could say that the secret things of God are for God to know, and we shouldn't concern ourselves with them. But again, I think it's far more likely that there is life on other planets, but not sentient life, and that's why we haven't been able to contact it. Like if there were cows on another planet, even if we sent radio signals into the atmosphere for thousands of years, no cow is going to be writing back. That seems way more likely to me. It's just way less interesting.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think we get this perspective that the universe revolves around us. God has other dealings besides just us. We know that from demons and angels.
Yeah.
However, what all that extends to, yeah, like you say, the knowledge of God is not for us in those realms because it's just not. Like, we're not there yet. And it may be that we're never there.
Yeah,
It may be that
be.
it may be that God can never reveal all things to us because we can't handle it. I mean, look how we handled the knowledge of good and evil. You know, I mean,
Well, we took it on our own terms, so
Yeah,
that might
yeah.
be a part of the reason why it was so corrupted. You know,
yeah.
But I see what you mean. Think about how the Jews handled the revelation of their Messiah. Think about how the rest of the world handles the revelation of Jesus Christ as the Messiah. You know, that is absolutely God's plan, and yet, even when God's plan is obvious and revealed, it's rejected by many. You know, so imagine how much more confusing God's plans for a race He has never disclosed would be if we have no idea, you know, what God's plan is for these, you know, these aliens.
Yeah, let alone eternity itself. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking about things way beyond what we know. And again, if it comes to a point where these things are revealed and it has to do with His ultimate plan, okay, cool.
Yeah.
You know, that's cool with me. I mean, I don't care. I mean, I know I get some hate sometimes for it, but it's whatever.
It'll all pan out.
Yeah, it is what it is. Like,
It is what it is. That one's for you, Jacob's coworker.
Yeah. My buddy that enjoys that so much, that's for you, man.
Well, my last question about aliens then is there's been lots of UFO sightings and like abduction reports and all this stuff. And there's some of them where it's like, okay, that's like clearly made up, or it's like it's clearly just for attention. But then there are other ones that are like, you know, like the United States military has reported these sightings of machines or unidentified flying objects that can like make a 90-degree turn traveling at the speed of sound, which would be physically impossible. Like they break the laws of physics. And this is like documented. What do we do with those experiences as Christians? Are we supposed to just say, I don't know, and just kind of move on? Or how do we respond to those kind of more paranormal activity things that happen in the world?
You know, my immediate response to that is to not have fear. Because I think that's what Jesus would say, is in all these trials and all these tribulations, whatever the uncertainties are, do not have fear. Because He tells us that over and over and over. I think you said, 365 times?
Yeah.
Because there's one for every day of the year, something like that.
Yeah.
To not fear. I mean, again, if this is part of His plan, cool. But do not fear. We have reverence for the Lord. We have fear in the Lord. That is it. We know that our salvation is tied up with Him, and nothing else can break that. We have a bind to Him that is beyond anything of this realm or the next.
I love that you started there because, like, I think a lot of people's first reaction to things they don't understand is, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for my family, for my friends, for the people and the things that I care about? And I love that that's your first response, is to say, hey, the Lord commands us, do not be afraid. And if our theology teaches that God has control and power over all things, then even if there are things in this world that we can't understand, we know that our God has a good plan and purpose for His earth, His creation, and for His creatures, for us, and especially for His children. You know, we've been adopted as brothers and sisters with Christ, and so while that might look like going through things that we don't understand, there is a beauty to submitting to the will of the Lord. And not having fear, standing firm in the knowledge that He will protect us and provide for us, even if it leads to, you know, our going to heaven. You know, even if protection doesn't look like how we want it to, you know?
We get caught up in things, like you say, that we don't understand. And I think that our fallback is the flesh, you know, and with a lot of things. And when you talk about there are other beings, and people go, yeah, we know about angels and demons. Like, that's real. And spiritual warfare is real. And look at the things that are happening within our society. There is demonic influence. And that stuff is real.
Yeah.
And not that we should fear it, But that should be our sign to cling even tighter to the Lord, and that's all aliens would do. It should make me go, Lord, I'm clinging even tighter to you because I don't want any part of whatever that is going on. If it's something,
do not understand.
yeah, I don't understand, and I'm gonna fall back into my non-understanding and your understanding.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's also a good explanation for some of these like physics defying things. Is what if there is some sort of demonic entity that's behind deceiving people into believing there's some sort of higher power or some sort of force in this earth that we can't understand, in order to then draw attention away from the glory of God, or even to convince people to worship it instead of to worship Yahweh. That's a real possibility. There's been reports of folks who've had like out of body experiences with what they call alien abductions, who then try to convince them like they make religious appeals. They they require worship, or they even are specific and say like don't worship Jesus or things like that. Or it's just like, why would aliens care about our religious affiliations if they have nothing to do with the spiritual realm, And I'm not saying that's every case. I'm saying that's one or two cases that I've read about. But it seems likely that if we know of an entity that exists that can work outside the laws of physics, why not attribute that as the best explanation for those things? Because we know that demons and angels don't have to abide by the laws of physics. So that would be an explanation given our Christian worldview. Is it the best explanation? Like in a secular sense? Probably not. But in a Christian sense, it is a possible explanation for why we see these impossible things happen.
Mm-hmm. And even more, just as much as me and you don't fear, the other side, we wouldn't fear it in that instance either.
No.
Because we have, again, our hope and reassurance in the Lord, and that's it. We have freedom through Christ. We have freedom from these things.
Yeah.
It's very real and in our face how much there is demonic influence, yet nobody seems to really care. If these things are on your mind and they're on your heart, that's fine. It's fine to look into them. It's fine to study them. But ultimately, this is where you need to be. This is where your peace and your joy and your everlasting life is held, not in anything else.
In conclusion, when it regards to aliens, the best explanation that I've heard from like a more Christian perspective of like why it seems unlikely, given our theology, that sentient aliens exist, if the Bible tells us that all of creation is cursed under the fall of Adam and Eve, that would mean that these sentient aliens on another planet are now suffering the consequences of our sin. And to me, if they have sentience in the sense that we do, and they're aware of their creator, and they're aware of themselves, and they're aware of their obligation to that creator and things like that, it gets really sticky as far as what it means to be infected with sin, and it gets sticky as far as like what judgment looks like. It gets really confusing as far as like, okay, are they then suffering the consequences of our sin? That seems really unjust. It just gets into a lot of just very sticky theological waters really quickly. So do your own research, think about it. Hopefully we were able to present some interesting topics or thinking points to consider. But yeah, ultimately, like what Jacob said, if aliens were true and real, and we have nothing to fear. Nothing to fear.
Yeah, 100%.